Wholesalers are a central hub of the pharmaceutical supply chain and so attract a lot of attention from vendors, clients, and third parties. Their practices often seem opaque when contract terms that affect the supply chain are not communicated effectively. We're fortunate to have two industry veterans with us, the right questions to ask, that can avoid misunderstandings and promote a healthy relationship with wholesalers and 3PLs. Please welcome Frank Harris and Scott Cohon. Frank, Scott, come on up. The projector's overheating, so just roll with it. Roll with us, please.
Generic equipment? Very good. I tried. Thank you, Larry. I appreciate it. My name is Scott Cohon. I'm the Director of Sales and Trade Relations for Centrix Pharmaceutical. Centrix is a small branded company, and our generic company is Creekwood. Totally 4 SKUs across both companies, actually launching the 5th SKU next Tuesday. So, and looking to be alone in the marketplace for a while, hopefully. So it is my pleasure to also introduce Frank Harris, and Frank can talk about himself.
Yeah, so good afternoon, everyone. I'm Frank Harris. I've worked at ABC for 22 years, so before that I worked at Rugby. Always in generics. When Scott asked me to do this, I was in a sourcing role, so I have straddled the sides of either sourcing or selling, but always with generics. So right now I'm the Senior Vice President of Generic Commercialization and Inside Sales. So what that means is I'm responsible for setting the strategy of how we go to market, whether that's with somebody like a Walgreens or a Kaiser or the mom and pop pharmacies, as well as running the telesales group. We have to make sure we hit our plate.
The United States pharma industry, the only thing that we know for sure about this industry is it's going to be in constant change. It's changing all the time rapidly. Now we're talking DSCSA, we're talking supply chain, we're talking disruptions, we're talking all sorts of issues, quality issues, recalls. Now you've got huge mergers and acquisitions. We've got pretty much 3 customers in this industry. They've become the supergroups that Rob mentioned. They are responsible for roughly 90 to 95% of all generic, anyway, pharmaceuticals that are touched in this industry. It's crazy. They buy that large amount.
Yeah, so I would add to that. Also, the industry is not healthy, right? When our lobbyist left, but my comment would be, we do not have a generic problem in the country. We're very efficient at getting generics out, right? 90% of the prescriptions that we're filling are generic.
Yeah.
However, to just speak from revenue, AmerisourceBergen's a $180 billion revenue behemoth, right? Fortune 10 company. $15 billion, which means I'm by far the largest in the U.S. of generics, is what I sell. The rest of it's brands and maybe a couple billion of OTC, right? But most of it's brand, right? So 10% of what I actually goes in the totes is taking up almost 90% of the revenue, right? And that's where the problem is. And so when you hear about what's going on in Washington, and of course everybody wants lower drug prices. My concern and being one of these big behemoth deals, a lot of the problems that spun off on that. Did we get much better generic pricing? Did we become much bigger? Absolutely. Did we kick off a whole bunch of unintended consequences?
Absolutely.
That probably is one of the reasons we're responsible for the horrible supply environment that we're in right now. Probably. Right? I mean, that's for sure. That's one of them. So I think, just speaking for ABC, we acknowledge that, quite honestly, the Main Street pharmacies are choking, right? And that is our lifeblood. That's where we make money. AmerisourceBergen will always be around. I've got Walgreens, and these guys will be around. They're going to be a piece of it. So the challenge is if the independents start shrinking, which they are, that's where a lot of my gross profit comes from. So, a lot of the fees we charge you actually go right back into the programs we offer to keep them alive, right? I mean, we only make 1% at the end of the day, but 1% on 180 billion is a lot of money, but 1% is a horrible margin for that. And then I would say, Amazon, we had a piece about Amazon. Guess who PillPack's wholesaler is? So it's funny that, we actually are supplying PillPack the drugs that we're waiting for their disruptive model, whether or not they can get into it or not. There's so many fees and you're responsible, which is not what Amazon is saying they're doing on the other side, right? They're not responsible for those products. It costs a lot of money to be in distribution, and you all know that as 3PLs and manufacturers. But you know, I wouldn't be surprised if you saw Amazon buy one of these big three. To be honest with you, right? We're big, and what happens when you're big, you only do bigger things, right? So I wouldn't see something like that. We would be attractive to them. Sorry?
I know they have the stock to do it.
Yeah, you would do some kind of stock swap. Like, you know, honestly, we'd be attractive to them because we have 27 distribution centers. I have a national distribution
Will they
footprint.
be up and ready right
No, nothing. It's too big, right? It goes too fast. But you could talk about, you know, we do a very solid job in the U.S. at distribution, right? It is the most effective distribution network in the world. And pharmacies buy with just in time. I need this tomorrow is where you're getting it. So Amazon's got one step ahead of us with same day. We actually do same day in some markets.
Sure.
But you could conceivably, you know, whether it went to direct to consumer, I don't know. I mean, there's so many holes in that system, and I'd be concerned about counterfeit, you know, drugs coming in and who's checking that and the serialization. So I think a lot of that's going to prevent Amazon from really going in. I think they're going to have to go in as potentially as a healthcare with their healthcare initiative they have with JP Morgan and who's the other one? Berkshire. So they could do something where, you know, the system is broken because for folks on statins and you know, lisinoprils, the things that are relatively cheap, that could be cash, right? Doesn't even need to run through insurance, and you could cut out the PBM right there. Like, you know, there's something they could do that's disruptive, but whether or not they want to get into this low margin business, I don't think there's a lot of money in it for them, so I don't know that they will.
Right. That's why I think it might be their best interest is to go into a cash play. I mean, they might just go into a cash play. You want a Z-Pack? You're gonna find a way to get an electronic script. Your Z-Pack, exactly. It's $5, no copay, done, finished. We'll drone it to you tomorrow.
And that would be a better market, in my opinion. Like, honestly, I was talking to somebody last night. You've got the flu. You go to the doctor. This is like the dumbest. You're already contagious, right? You could use telemedicine. They'll call it a Tamiflu. There's no way to get it to you. So that would actually be a better like use of drone medicine. Like, you stay in your house. Do not come into my store. But you think about like where they're going, right? They go to Walgreens and they go to CVS because that's where they go because that's on every corner. You're contagious. You're actually bringing the flu into the people. Like, that is our system.
Yeah, but
So
that's how we sell more drugs. Come on.
I get it, but you know, maybe that is a way Amazon would impact the market. Something like that. That makes total sense. What are you doing? Driving around and you're contagious, right? You're actually spreading it, which is good for you guys as manufacturers because we'll buy more. Bad for your failure to supply, but
That's right. Exactly right.
in fairness, we don't bill you on things like that because we understand that's seasonal. So.
Exactly.
And then I guess, look, I actually, I was traded from AmerisourceBergen over to WeBad, so I'm probably also directly responsible for some of these things that have happened. So AmerisourceBergen did our deal with Walgreens, which kicked off our WeBad relationship, WeBad sourcing, which kind of sent everyone back on their heels. Cardinal quickly followed with CVS, which is Red Oak, which is probably a little bit meaner than WeBad, and then McKesson did something with Walmart. But really what that did was it took out that layer of market basket selling where you could sell to wholesalers here and you were selling to CVS and Cardinal here. You can't do that anymore. So to you, there really is one price. I would argue as a wholesaler, I still don't have that price, but I know WeBad's getting it, right? So I know that we're getting it, but my challenge is I fight with WeBad all the time saying I want a better cost. I can't sell. Or you disintermediate me and you go to Publix. Well, Publix comes back to me, right? So then it's like we actually wind up shooting ourselves in the foot, chasing this price right down the rabbit hole. So,
and if you look at these big three conglomerates, you're looking at some molecules. Like let's take immediate release metformin. You're talking about 95% of all metformin tablets are going through one of these wholesalers, chains, PBMs. You've now got, and we talked a little bit earlier, you've got CVS, who now owns Aetna, and they've got their one-stop clinics in their stores. So not only are you going to go to the clinic and see a PA, you're going to get a script, you're going to fill it there, your insurance company is going to approve it right there, one-stop shopping. And CVS has kind of done something brilliant, I think, and they've rebranded themselves as CVS Health, removing tobacco from their stores. And it's a great first step, and it's a great marketing thing. Not so sure that it's the best thing for our industry as a whole.
So the other thing I would add to that is, and I spent a lot of time on this too, and just to put it at scale as a separate comment, how big are we at sourcing? I was approved to cut a $500 million PO without permission, right? I didn't have to go get approvals. Like that's big, right? When you think about it, that's ridiculously big. So I mean, that's how big it is, and that's how much we're buying and moving and through the system all the time. But
the GenScoPharma.com.
yeah, for sure. Can you pay the
fees? The fees.
Can you pay the fees? But we're spending time talking about different aspects of marketing, right? And what comes up a lot is trust. And I know Nick's coming up with CBD. That's a big issue of trust. How do you trust that supply chain? That's what you're hearing a lot. Customers do have low trust. With Amazon, actually Amazon's done a great job. And you know what they put their trust on? Their logistics ability. Yeah. It's not price, right? She said that price is actually not the place for that. What's potentially interesting to watch is Walmart is making a big move in healthcare. Yeah. And if you're a Walmart shopper, you have really high trust, right? And not everybody's a Walmart shopper, but if you do shop at Walmart, what's the one thing you feel good about? Price. Because they beat up price, right? Whether it's jeans or tires or whatever it is, that they're constantly rolling the price down. Yeah. So now if I trust that, and now I'm going there for my doctor, high trust, right? And they've already put out a cash price on a lot of things. One of them is dental. So you can get your teeth cleaned for $25. Pretty scary though, right? I mean, if you're a dentist, whoa, that's not what I like to charge as a dentist. Right now it's $25. That's their $4 generic plan when that rolled out, right?
That's your new price.
So that's what potentially is coming, right? But consumerism has to also come to change. And the challenge is, look, I think we're partners in many ways. We're partners with the suppliers. We're feeling the same pain you are. Your pain isn't kicking off riches for me. If anything, I'm struggling just to stay the same, right? So the piece that has to drop is Washington, or collectively we have to do a better job of changing the system that works without kicking off a whole myriad of other issues that we didn't think about, right? So it's a big thing. It's going to take a village to get it right.
Yeah, there's no real quick fix to this whole situation. Frank talked, the wholesaler works on extremely tight margins, 1%, talking on the generic side, or talking about 1% on 150 billion. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's incredible.
180.
180.
Don't take away 30 billion.
That's right. Well, fees. It's all about the fees.
That's a horrible business.
If you think about the wholesaler and what the wholesaler does for pharma now, you really can't operate without the wholesaler. And I'm talking about one of these big three, or regional, or there really aren't a lot of regional wholesalers left. They've all joined groups amongst themselves or about to join groups. Shipping onesies. I like to ship case packs. I like to ship pallets because it's more affordable for me. Overnight shipping to their customers. Machinery and human resources, paying benefits. We as manufacturers, as pharma companies, would have to lower our research and development budgets if we had to do onesies, if we had to, pick, pack, and ship onesies and twosies and overnight and do some of the things that our friends at AmerisourceBergen and the other guys do. Carrying inventory for up to 90 days on some SKUs and having to, pay for it or negotiate special terms, opportunities like that.
Yeah, so I would just add to that. There's a link there that I think are you sending these slides out after, Larry?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Bob Mach, who's our president, there's a good article he sent out. So there's a study done, and it says the wholesalers are saving $33 to $55 billion in driving operational efficiency. So if we didn't exist, that cost on top of your GDUFA fees would fall to you. Right, and so when you think of that, again, we make 1%. So if I take McKesson, Cardinal, and ABC and say, what did we all make? You can add it all up. We're not making 33 billion, right? So we're driving efficiencies for the marketplace, which we do play a vital role in how product gets from A to B.
It's a really good article. It really resonated with me that we really do need the wholesalers, and they do provide a good service, and we do need to work in partnership with them.
Yeah, I mean, you may not know, like, so here's the things we do in a pharmacy. Pharmacists go to pharmacy school, they don't go to business school. We provide them a business coach because they're running a retail shop, right? And they don't know the first thing about it. We merchandise their store. And this is like, it's free, basically. Well, it's not free, it comes out of the fees that we collect from you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
When you're negotiating with your wholesaler and you're given this 50-page document and said, here's the blank, sign at the bottom, and then we start negotiating. What's negotiable? What's really not negotiable? Rob mentioned fees for not supplying. Those, if Walgreens or one of the independents that Frank services doesn't have that medicine, they're going somewhere else. They're going down the street to Rite Aid, or they're going down the street to some other pharmacy that's not an ABC customer. That's a lost sale. That's on us. If we didn't predict well as a manufacturer, that's on us. What's negotiable? What's really not negotiable? Cash discount, I think a lot of times they're general, and it's a pretty fixed, straight rate with all of the wholesalers. You'll be paying the same thing on all three. Marketing and admin fees, you're given a number, and that's something that I think that you're able to negotiate back and forth. And again, don't worry about starting low and ending somewhere in the middle, because at the end of the day, Frank is doing the best for him and his company. I'm doing the best for myself and my company. And somewhere in the middle, in partnership, we're going to have to come to a happy medium. Data and information fees. With DSCSA, we're now at the point where we're going to start aggregating data on where your product is going. Our product has now got to be serialized, and there's a cost to that. Our product has to go to the wholesaler where they can scan the pallet. It tells you how many bottles of XYZ, and here's the lot numbers of this product. There's a cost to that. Infrastructure at ABC. Cost them to invest in that. Cost us to invest in that. That's something that's going to end up biting us later if we don't do it right. Price changes, increases and decreases. Well, our president and our politicians are talking about hugely high pharma prices. Not on the generic end, I can tell you that. And I can't tell you the last time that I raised a price on a generic product to the industry, because they're far and few between. The industry used to, some of the wholesalers used to look for opportunity buys. If I buy it, I want 10% off for cough and cold season on your cough and cold line, what can you do for me? It was a no-brainer. It was easy money for us. We could ship it over a period of time, and now instead, I'm going to cap it at 1 month buy, 3% instead of going to the full 10, because it's in the best interest of my company to think about that. And that's something that I think is negotiable. And then failure to supply. Failure to supply language is roughly the same in all the big wholesaler and conglomerate agreements. It says, if you don't supply, you're going to be penalized. And we just pretty much have to accept that. I don't have much bargaining power versus a Teva or a Mylan, who can come in and say, well, then I'm not going to sell you my first day launch of XYZ drug. But they still need me, and I still need them. And in partnership, we'll come up with something that works for both of us. To this day, I haven't, in my 20 years in the generic side, haven't signed an agreement like that as is. The first one that I recall coming out was Rite Aid's old agreement. Came as a PDF. You couldn't change any language. You couldn't do anything to it. Here's a PDF. Sign it as is. There will be no changes. Half the people signed it as is. And half of us said, no, we're not going to do that. And they realized, we're going to have to back up a little bit. But they were the first ones that I can recall that came up and said, you take it or leave it. We're Rite Aid, we're big, and we don't need you. Well, Rite Aid's now half the size that it was. Half the stores are Walgreens, half the stores are going elsewhere. Who knows what's going to happen with Rite Aid. moving forward.
So I give you a cheat sheet. Rob, you mentioned communication, right? And so we're a lot of, particularly smaller suppliers. I mean, listen, I wish Teva didn't communicate as much as they do to us because, we know everything that they're doing and we're fighting with Teva all the time about all of this stuff, right? But a lot of the small guys don't communicate with us. And that is a kiss of death. I am too big to mess around with. If you don't have your back order report the way that I need it, we give you the template, do it. If you don't go into what our portfolio is called Certio, which tells you everything of where your product is in AmerisourceBergen, tells you what the forecast is, tells you what your sales are, tells you who's buying it. If you don't know your business better than I do, it's a problem. I'm going to nail you, right? And if you are having an issue and you proactively tell me, I've got a problem, this is where I'm doing, I'm looking at your on-hand inventory, we may have a problem, you might want to send it out to bid, maybe do a one-time buy, whatever it is, I'm a lot nicer to you.
Yeah.
But if you catch me by surprise, because what happens is, a lot of times I sit as a wholesaler and I'm like, it does seem easier to go over to work for a manufacturer. I know you have problems, but I wind up having every one of your problems. And then I have to explain them to everybody internally and externally, and I can't tell you how many calls I was on about the valsartan issue and how it trickled. I had to talk to every customer about this and every manufacturer, what's going on, and internally everybody wants to know about that. So, that ultimately, when we were talking at lunch, right? It doesn't matter what the product is. We're talking about pharmaceuticals here, but there's three things that you would always measure when you're doing a buy. It's price, quality, supply. We'll use real estate as a, quality is replaced by location. For real estate. That happens to be a pretty good spot out there, right? I bet you that's a lot more money than the one that doesn't have the view, right? So location is the quality, right? And the challenge with our system is the end user, which is the pharmacies, hospitals, wherever, their incentive is price. So they don't pay for quality. I would gladly pay for quality if you have it, except I can't sell it. No one will buy it. It's not being reimbursed, right? The system is, the three things are not aligned across the network. And so once that happens, then you'll see better appetite for a price increase. You raise your price, at least at ABC, we're okay with it. I'm going to send it out to bid. You may lose the item, but I'm okay with you raising your price. I have to do that, right? Walmart does the same thing.
Yep.
Right? I have to do that as a provider of products. I have to make sure that I always have a competitive price. But if you're telling me and it stands to reason that you've got additional costs or APIs went up or whatever it is, and that you're not alone, right? We'll send it out, and
Absolutely.
it really doesn't do me any good. Actually, your fees are going down because prices have gone down, right? So
The percentages are the same, but
I was told Tracy and Gina at lunch, like we were meeting with a customer. And this comment came out about generic pricing, and my boss threw out this number that, did you know that your prices have gone down 50% since we signed this deal? But your units are way up,
yeah.
right? But the pricing has really just been sucked out of generics, which is it's also a problem for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Now you're working with a 3PL or you're working with your wholesaler and your partners. How do you minimize your exposure? The key, number one, pick up the phone. Don't send an email and think that that's going to solve a problem or communicate a problem. Pick up a phone. The more interpersonal you can be, if you're in a local area, if you live outside of Philadelphia, make an appointment, go see your wholesaler partner. It's important that you explain this. Bounce ideas off of each other. Think creatively outside of the box. Visit your 3PL, visit your wholesaler partners. It's important. And not just here's your Christmas basket. Thanks for buying our stuff.
You get a Christmas basket? Oh,
No.
Thank you.
Are you allowed?
Exactly.
Now, the other thing I would add to that would be, so these big companies, we're massive, right? There's only maybe 5 suppliers that I know of that have been everywhere within ABC, right? So our replenishment office is in Minnesota. Our headquarters is in Philly. Our chargeback team is in Thoroughfare, New Jersey. Yeah. Our distribution centers are spread all over the place. We own all these other little businesses. We own a repacker called AHP. We're 50% of the independent oncology market, and that's down in Dothan, Alabama. We're all over the place, and it's complicated. And I can't explain it all because I don't deal with oncology stuff, right? So that's not me, but you may have a product that's going to trip over that. So if you don't have a good relationship with your category manager at ABC, McKesson, Cardinal, whoever that is, you're not going to be successful in that, because the nature of these deals that we have with the customers, we really are the face to you. Yeah, I mean, some of them can buy direct, but they come, the second you leave there, they're calling us going, by the way, do you have this item? What's the price? Right? And then we find out, and then we're like, okay. So, and I get it, I'm not saying, if that's their intent, that's fine, but ultimately they will come back and shop that item, or I will go hunting for that item.
Right. I know Frank's got a catch.
Yeah, and I just have one question, I think it's for everyone. So, it has to do with distribution. So, obviously, we're friends, right? We're all most of us know each other forever. So, the impact of the next day air compared to shipping second, third, or whatever it is, I think is a huge cost factor. You see that changing, because I think it needs to. Because the days of a pharmacy saying, oh, I need my whatever, next day, it's 3 or 4 times the cost to ship it. So, I mean, I'm just giving advice, that would help.
So we only do the next day air through the telesales business. For the retail business, which is almost all of it, that's all coming from the distribution centers, right? So, but I would suggest that, do you really need over-the-counter products in unit of use? Like, do you really need to add 1 bottle of children's Tylenol? Like, that's what you need? Or 1 toothbrush, and we do that. But we've made it so that you can do that just in time. But, I mean, honestly, it would be a lot more efficient for us. We could actually compete with Amazon if we just had a big hub in the middle of the country and said, you know what, you order on Mondays, you order on Tuesdays, these, West Coast orders on Wednesdays, and we just ship it out that way.
The regional wholesalers did a really good job with this. Like if you look at the old Kinray model, where Kinray had its own trucks and they were delivering to their own local pharmacies in the New York metropolitan area, it was great. Then they sold out, and the big red bird took them over, and things changed. And it became, it's not.
Did that 35 years, 40 years ago.
Yeah.
I get that, right?
Yeah, but it has to change. I mean, look, it's a low margin business, and the guys that are left, there's a sign in their yard. I'd say that.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Guys, thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.